knows.
All right, now we're live.
And we're live!
Jamie, why are you making this harder than it has to be?
I'm really tired. I don't really sometimes I go through periods where I just don't want to, rehash all this stuff.
I'm not asking you to rehash anything. I'm just asking you to have a conversation.
What do you want to have a conversation? What do you want to have
a conversation? We could talk about movies. We could talk about movies, Jamie.
What movies do you want to talk about? Paul
Thomas Anderson.
It's hit and miss. I didn't love Licorice Pizza very much.
No, Licorice Pizza is weird. He just got enamored with that girl, I think.
Magnolia is great. There Will Be Blood is great. Phantom Thread is great.
That's what I want to ask you. Have you seen Phantom Thread? I
have.
And you were saying something to me the other day about being, when you're working and you don't want to stop and all this stuff. And I'm like, you understand that's the point of that movie, right?
No. I mean, I just do like.
He was the obsessive artist. He was the obsessive artist who just worked and worked and worked. And he had the enabler and the sister who wanted to just keep working and working. And it was that funny little woman who had to poison him just to get him to slow down, just to get him to take a break.
I don't think that's me. I think that
No, I don't think it's you. That movie is a very extreme example of what we're talking about. But what you described to me the other day is a micro version of that. No, and I'm sitting here trying to tell you that this is a break. This is not more work. This is not developed traffic.
Well, I don't know. The whole thing has gotten really weird. Like all the broken relationships, are hurting my feelings. Like, I don't really know what to do with it. I don't want to be, there seems to be like relationships fracturing and, it's not super enjoyable to me to watch. So
are you talking about people on the network? Or are you talking about somebody else?
No, I'm talking about people like that grew up like us that are not getting along. This group of people tends to fight. We were kind of programmed to fight.
Yeah.
Like if
handle,
handle or disconnect.
Handle or
God. Right. Yeah. The Borg talks about responsibility, but it's the least responsible group on the planet. They don't ever apologize for anything. They never did anything wrong. They could do 2,000 forced abortions. They never did anything wrong. They could abuse children. They never apologize. So here we are all these years out. And what do? And they're very forceful and they say F a lot. They say the F word a lot and just get it done, be causative, get it done at all costs. And then here we are.
It's the details don't matter. Just get it done. Just push it through, whatever it is. And even if it's a bullshit, faulty product, it still doesn't matter. You just got to do it. But we don't have to be like that. Good afternoon. Wait, let me say some Fat Grammy. Good afternoon, Fat Grammy. I'm sorry if you heard me yelling. I didn't realize I was yelling on the mic. I was yelling, though. Oh, I was yelling.
Hey, Spanky's calling me, but let me just let her know that I'm live and I'll call her right back.
Spanky, the infamous Spanky?
Hey, Spanky, I'm live on YouTube, but it's you. Call me back twice, so I'm taking the call. You're
Honey, okay, I'm sorry.
No problem. I'll call you right back. Is everything okay? Sure. Yes.
Anyway, I'm sorry if I was yelling on mic. I didn't mean to be. I'm very loud, though, sometimes. And something kind of upsetting just happened a few minutes ago.
Yeah, you mean staying here? Maybe you want to? Oh, okay. I will find a place and recommend a couple and call you back that are really easy. Okay. All right. You got it. Okay. Bye. Hello.
Yeah.
Well, Os is gonna love that. Anyway, so. We're
Wait, who was that? What would you say?
No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So anyway, we're programmed to, we spend our whole lives being taught to fight and get something done at all costs, get the product, get it done. And
it's all or nothing.
Yeah,
it's all all or nothing.
As I like to say, if you want to make a save the world omelet, you're going to have to crack a few skulls. Okay. And so that's, we grew up like that, learning that, disconnect from someone, all or nothing, or, handle the shit out of them. And, here we are all these years out, and, that's how we treat each other. And it's always been like that. The history of this thing is people not getting along. The difference is, I guess, is the difference between,
This is why I think everybody needs some AA, because AA teaches you how to put effort into those things and changing those things.
Yeah, but I have a question. What's interesting to me is, listen, if you're born in this thing, and that's the only world you ever know, and just like this crazy, weird bubble, okay, I can understand why you would kind of stay in it so long, come back to it, all your families in it, all your friends in it. It's all you ever know. I have a harder time understanding, like, if you're a 22-year-old kid and you get recruited in college in the 70s or something like that, you get into this thing, and then the abuse starts, but a life maybe without that. A life where, all violent force is not.
Let me say something.
Let me say this. A life where all this violent force is not part of life. A life where treating people with dignity, respect, kindness, grace, using unity and harmony and sleep and all these things are what make the world work.
I don't know. I think a lot of
people. Hold on. I'm asking a question. So my question is, do you think why don't those people leave faster since they knew what was there before? They can't, how come those people can't tell it's abuse? I can understand why we would.
I think that as is true of abusers, they know how to target the abused. That I think a lot of the people that Scientology targets, finding your ruin and all that, those are the people that are damaged in a way that they accept abuse. Like, when that's a symptom of abuse. When you grow up abused, you then, as you grow up, you continue to accept abuse in a way that most people do not. But I don't think that even I don't think anybody joining Scientology is a well-adjusted person. Do you?
I don't know what a well-adjusted person is. That just sounds.
I do. I've met a couple. There are a few. They're unicorns, but they exist. They do exist.
It seems like a foreign concept to me, but maybe. And
this is true of all forms of abuse, from domestic abuse to sexual abuse. People they know how to pick their victims, as it were.
Yeah, my mother grew up in a loving home. She lost a parent at a very young age, but she grew up in a loving home. So
what happened to her?
What?
Yeah, what happened to Roz? Why did she join? What was she looking for?
I can give you my theory. She got sick when she was young, so she was dealing with her mortality, and then her father died when she was young, and she was dealing with mortality at a very young age, when most kids don't even know that there is mortality. And I think that kind of pressure of dealing with death at a very young age,
it's stolen innocence.
Can cause someone to fracture. It doesn't justify the actions of hurting other people, but I can understand it. I can apologize for it and not want to tolerate it at the same time. It doesn't give you an excuse to hurt people, but see, here we are rehashing the past, which I don't really want to do. I
did want to say something to you about her, though, because you had told me that the reason your mother named you, or your name is James, but she calls you Jamie because she didn't want people calling you Jim. And I kind of wonder why you don't then make a point of calling yourself Jim, just to flout it in her face.
Well, I don't love the name Jim, like Jungle Jim. I got to go to the gym. It's
I love the name Jim.
Okay,
Jim is the grown-up man, is an adult.
No. The only time
Jamie's a kid. Jamie and Danny are little kids. Jim and Dan are men.
I think James and Jamie are alliterative. I think Danny and Daniel are alliterative. I think Jim, sounds like some form of body secretion. I don't know. So what are we talking about, Dan? You wanted to do this. Here we are. Okay.
I don't know why I want to do this, Jamie. I think I just might be a glutton for punishment, especially considering how hard it is to get you to do this.
Well, I've been working on deadlines for the past year, so I'm a little tired. And I normally, when I finish those things, I normally kind of try not to talk too much to people for a few weeks because I'm normally so exhausted that I end up saying things or dealing with situations in ways that I regret. So I try to kind of wind down for 4 to 6 weeks when I'm working on something heavy so that I can be present. That's kind of how I see it.
And
but let's talk about, why don't we talk about what's relevant? What's relevant right now is all this fracturing that's going on. What is the wise, sage, homeless mustard have to say about this fracturing?
I don't really.
In the end, does it even matter? Like, does it really matter, Danny?
No, not really. I don't care. Like, I haven't seen any fracturing that I think is particularly bizarre or weird. I think that these people are people and they're being who they are. Like, nobody is acting out of character, in my opinion. Nobody's like acting like a bizarro. And then I'm not really aware of all the fracturing. I'm not really aware of who says who to who. And every time I ask somebody about something or somebody, I get a whole other story. So there's like clearly way more going on than I know about.
Yeah, maybe it's something we shouldn't talk. Maybe it's the kind of thing that, this show is kind of esoteric and niche in a lot of ways. Like, the only reason someone would want to listen to us or talk to us or share what we have to say is if they kind of already know a lot of the backstory. Right?
Yeah, people are for the most part
like some random person,
right?
Tuning in on YouTube is probably not super interested in these, this conversation using all these foreign weird words.
I should do like an intro video, like explaining to people what's going on here. Yeah. But I don't like. I like making things difficult.
So you don't think, you don't think harmony is important? Like, wouldn't it be nicer if we could all just get along? Like,
I don't know. I don't know what harmony is. And I don't really know what that is. So I know that it's a difficult thing for people to find even in the regular world. So I don't know.
Can you give me just one,
I think as long as we promise not to start disconnecting from people.
Can you give me just one lyric, like one phrase of Village Sidewalk?
Oh, I don't remember. Please be gentle, please be kind, hold it in your hand.
Right?
So why do you like, why you like that? You know why you like that song?
I was trying to harmonize with you, bro.
Oh, I can't remember.
Okay.
But you know why you like that song so much is because of Joel's guitar playing. That's what it is you like so much.
No, I think it's the best song you've ever, you've written some really good songs recently, so there's probably a lot I haven't seen. But no, it's one of my favorite melodies that you ever wrote, and I love the lyrics.
So that is held in the hand. Please be gentle, please be kind. I don't remember how it goes.
We just harmonized. That's what harmony is. We did it. Okay. All right.
Sat together in perfect.
So what do you think about that concept, homie? That we're kind of been, we're like, we're all kind of booby trapped. We've been talking,
we are.
You know how he talks about how
here's his line: complications lying in wait. That's a line for one of my songs. Yeah, we're all booby trapped.
You know how the old man talks about, we call him the old man. He talks about, this is a concept I want to run by you. He talks about Simon Bolivar, his whole Simon Bolivar story, where he uses telling the story of Simon Bolivar and his consort Manuela Sands to justify leaders being abusive. It's kind of incredible, and breaking the law.
I don't know the story. What's the story?
It's the responsibility of leaders. We all read it growing up. It's everywhere. It's at the back of at the back of the introduction to Scientology ethics book. Okay.
Then I've definitely read it. But
yeah,
you said
where ethics, pure, everything that's ethical is what protects the group. And if it doesn't protect the group, then it's evil. And if revealing
that's the declaration of cult. That's
If revealing childhood sexual assault, harms the group, then that's evil. That's the equation of that book.
Yeah.
But at the back of that book, there's a essay that Mr. Hubbard wrote about Simon Bolivar, about how leaders are supposed to treat the people around them and how the people around them are supposed to treat the leaders, and the mistakes that Simon Bolivar, who freed Colombia from the yoke of Spain, and his consort, Manuel Sáenz, made, and why they fell from power at the end of their lives, and what we can learn from that. And one of the things he talks about in there is like how we were all raised on the high wine of, how he was raised on the high wine of revolution. Like he was raised in a revolutionary time. I don't know if he was in Paris and or in France and it was the French Revolution, but he was raised on revolution. So he lived revolution, Simon Bolivar. So then, sometimes when I read that, I think about how we were raised on the high wine of saving the planet,
mm-hmm.
and the high wine of, getting things done at all costs, mm-hmm. and a lot of black and white thinking.
Mm-hmm.
You're either with us or you're against us. Mm-hmm. Right.
That shit's evil, man. That's
evil. All or nothing. Right.
Yeah.
And so there's two things that I think about. One is, how much is this kind of, there's a lot of like, when you're inside this Borg, but for people that don't know what it's like in the inner core of Hubbard's
down in the mountain,
Hubbard's private navy, it's aggressive. Okay, right? Like if you don't do what you're supposed to do, you go do the decks. I mean, they have terms that soften it called the hard labor. You can go if you do something really bad. You can go. You can go to this thing. I heard they banned it, called the Rehabilitation Project Force, which is basically a very brutal re-education camp that might make Mao blush. You run everywhere. You're not allowed to speak until spoken to. You eat slop. You sleep on crappy bedding around rats and roaches. When I was a kid and my mother was on it, and I went to visit her, like going to a prison camp visitation. She wore, an armband, to show her status, like an armband that you would see like at a concentration camp,
right?
Like Dachau or Auschwitz. Okay, so it's a very aggressive environment where if you get out of line, there are brutal punishments. Hubbard used words like,
and all of that's justified.
Yeah.
We're saving the planet here, so your little mealy human concerns don't matter.
Yeah, so he used words like head on a pike.
Yeah, head on a pike. I've had that one thrown at me a couple times.
Yeah, like
I've been the head on the pike a couple times.
Yeah, you have to make an example. Too gruesome to confront. If someone's not getting something done, you give them a worse alternative that's too gruesome for them to experience, so then they'll get it done. So force is the law. Force is the lay of the land. It's a force group. It is a group where if you grow up in it or you're associated for a long period of time, threat and aggression is the language of this group. And so there's two questions I ask myself. One is, where you have these people that are out of it 20, 30, 40 years later, and they're using, threat and aggression is how we deal with each other. How have we been booby trapped because we're so inured to that behavior. Second thing that I wonder about, some people that are, kind of addicted to being saviors within the people that are free from this group is, it's really difficult. And maybe this is the one I would probably rather have you comment on both. But I think a lot about this thing of where Hubbard talks about the high wine of revolution for Simon Bolivar. Like when you're raised from birth, or you spend decades of your life either on staff or in this inner core, and you're raised, and you really do believe that you're saving the universe, you're saving the planet, you're saving mankind. And that we're going to then move on to target 2 and save another universe. And then, he says things, we have this brief chance in eternity. We're the only hope. And I guess a lot of religions kind of have that thing of being the only one and the only hope. But the way this thing is sold inside, you either have to believe it, go schizophrenic, or leave, or all three. Okay. So, imagine that's a very lofty kind of intoxicating way to live life. It releases oxytocin, it's releasing dopamine, this idea of just like this lofty goal of saving man, of saving the universe. Okay.
It's a big ego trip.
Yeah. And then
and also your praise for having chosen or found it. We chose, we were so theta that we knew where to get born even. So like, not only were we part of this incredible, not only were we there.
We're also being taught that we chose our bodies.
Right.
We're coming back from a previous life to finish.
So somehow we knew that already, and we knew
we started.
We don't have to tell you how special this all is. You chose to be born here.
Yeah, and I mean, my mother once told me, like, when I was a baby, she said, I thought you and your brothers when we were babies, that we were with her on this. but my point is that, so say you live a life where you're born in this, you're raised in this thing of like spaceships.
I thought you were with me on this. Oh man. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. And you're raised from this concept of saving the universe, and everything has to be sacrificed for it. That's how heady it is. Like, I didn't go to school growing up. Well, how important is school if we got to save the universe, right?
And if everything you need to know, you can learn from the tech, and it doesn't matter what the schooling is all.
Yeah. So
PTS middle class.
Yeah. So then
you had an answer for everything, man.
Yeah. So then you come out of this thing after your whole life, if you're born in it, or maybe even just you get into it when you're older and you're in that for 10 years, and then you go back to like, you're just in a regular person. Okay. You're like, you get a job, working as a junior accountant, or working in data entry, or just, working at a shop, or just something. And you're just a person living life. It's almost like the Hurt Locker, right?
Wishing you were special.
Where the guy comes back from war, and then he's like at the supermarket counter, and he's like, what am I doing here? Like, you get kind of.
Yeah, that's true. You get involved in something real. You get involved in something real, or you think is real, then dealing with the mundane becomes very difficult.
Yeah. So you come out, and then you're expected to live this mundane life, right?
Yeah.
So how many of us that are kind of active in this are doing it because we just don't know how to go back to a mundane life? We don't know how to create a life of deep meaning and existence outside of either saving the planet or destroying the people that lied to us, destroying the people that lied to us about saving the planet, right? Like, how much of what goes on in this, in terms of how we're interested in this, why we're active in this, are we doing it just because we want to feel alive? Because when you feel like you're saving the planet, you can knock that manipulation. But when you feel like you're saving the planet, Danny, I mean, you're saving the planet. I mean, that is intoxicating, man. That makes you feel alive,
so fucking special.
I know, right? So, how much are we just
trying to keep feeling special?
Yeah.
Well, luckily, the whole culture is on an ego trip that kind of accommodates for it. Do you know what I mean? The fact that YouTube and YouTubing and influencers, you're an influencer, you have a TED Talk, all of that feeds into this stuff, but the whole fucking world is doing it. The whole fucking world is going, look at me.
I would say 100% that my motivation to go and kind of make art and write about ideas and stuff is, I want, I'm used to life. I was raised with this notion of like incredibly deep meaning so deep that you could kill a baby. Okay. So for me, I'm sure part of my story is, okay, well, let's make things mean something, and let's live a life where things mean something. It makes it hard to just have a conversation with somebody, because I'm always getting way too deep and way too morose and way too serious about everything.
Yeah, there you go. Everything means everything.
But there's ways you can approach that. You can approach that in ways where, you hop on YouTube and make videos. You can approach it. You know, the projects I do take a really long time and they're really hard. And I had to really struggle to learn how to do it. Right. And you know, it's a nuanced thing. You know, I find myself, you know, I consume a lot of this content. I find myself having very different views than some of the mainstream views, maybe within the group. You know, that, you know, within the content. You know, like I probably hold the parents and the people that walked by and saw us get abused far more accountable than I hold the commander of the private Navy and the people.
You mean the people who had a sense of a base of comparison and should have.
Yeah, I mean, I hold the public that were in the outside world and our parents far more accountable than, you know, the commander and his private Navy and the people in his adherents, in the sense that your parents are your first line of defense. Right.
Wait, are you talking about Scientology parents, or you're talking about other people?
Just in general, like your parents are supposed to be your first line of defense,
and they think clearing the planet is.
I know, but if we're going to be mad at somebody, you know, these people that were supposed to protect us, our first line of defense, that's who we should be mad at first.
Well,
right.
I'm mad at them.
And then I spend a lot of time thinking about, now that thinking about the people that were the public people that went and got their counseling, they went and got their classes, and they watched us walking around there. They could imagine they weren't in school. You could see our facilities. Our living conditions were right across the street. You know, the derelict tenement of the Fountain Building is right across the street from the Advanced Division, right there. So is the Apollo Training Academy, which is not even a thing. It's just a slum office building, not up to code, where kids can hurt themselves, with a dirt patch behind it, right? So there's all these fans.
Did people know that much? I mean, I don't know how much. I knew that. You knew that.
See it. It's observable. Like, we played in that front area. Like it wouldn't take a rocket scientist to know that those kids weren't in school.
Yeah,
the people didn't care, and I could get into all sorts of reasons why I think aspects of the doctrine, whether it's the counseling, the machine counseling, or the non-reactionary training, you know, why these things, you know, if you do the non-reactionary training so that you don't react to a violent situation, when you think about how we practice those drills, they also make it so it kind of just turns off your reaction. It turns off your ability to listen to your body. It turns off your.
Well, they train us to dissociate.
Yeah, it turns off your empathy, right? So I can justify.
Again, I've said this many times in all the recovery spaces I've been in. Everybody's working at getting over the impulses that we were all trained to lean into.
Yeah. So my question would be to you, Daniel, Homeless Mustard, the sage, are these people that kind of walked past us while we were being slowly disintegrated psychologically and physically? Serge talks a lot about this, and whenever I hear him talk a lot about this, my ears prick up and it resonates.
Serge is very passionate. Okay.
No, but this particular thing he talks about more than anyone, and it really resonates with me. And I feel I don't know him, but I should know him, because he's that aspect of what he talks about. I don't,
you could reach out to him.
I feel like I feel like he's the only one that talks about that.
Well, that happened to him, right? Wasn't he
the parents? But one of the other things he talks about is this idea of the people that walk past us every day, clamoring for their, classes and their counseling, and just ignoring us, right? Like, Homeless Mustard, are those people accountable for what I consider?
I think okay. There's an old adage. There's an old adage about how does evil happen when good men do nothing, right? What I want to say. What was your question exactly?
Are the people that walk
are they accountable
every day being abused?
What I want to say is,
are they accountable for what happened to us? Should they be held accountable?
I don't know if they should be held accountable. What I was going to say to you is that what I think is true and unfortunate is that it's normal for people to walk by things like that and not want to take it in, not really see it for what it is. And they don't think about it. They don't discuss it. Certainly you asked me as homeless mustard. This is something I bore witness to often as a homeless person, how often people do not want to see the degradation that is right before their eyes. They will step over it rather than acknowledge its existence. And that's just people. People are scared. People are scared. People are scared to see the atrocities of the world because it becomes overwhelming. People are really afraid to get involved because God only knows what else is going on there. I mean, could you imagine if a passerby had said something? What are these kids? Are these kids going to school? I mean, the church would have buried them.
I don't know. There was a couple people that did something about it, either publicly or not publicly, or I wouldn't even be around today. You know, I'd have stepped, you know, if Beverly had not stepped in, I don't know that I would be around today. If there was a guy that started a bunch of Boy Scout troops.
Well, okay, well, let me say something.
Hold on, let me say this.
The Boy Scout troop and Beverly are different than your question.
No. What I'm saying is those two people, the guy that started the Boy Scout troops, I don't want to call him out, and Beverly, we don't need to say her last name.
I don't even know her last name now.
Okay, I do. Beverly, they obviously thought something is desperately wrong here and I better do something about it. So in that area, in that way, Daniel, and this is fine because we disagree on a lot of things, I would profoundly disagree with you. I think there's a big difference between stepping over and not seeing.
No, but Jamie, back up, because you don't disagree with me, because that's, I'm sorry.
Let me finish.
Wait, stop. No, because you can't just barrel forward. I have to go back now because you said two different things, Jim. You said people just going on course, walking by this and ignoring it, and then you shifted to Beverly and the Boy Scout troop guy. Those are not just public going to course. Those are not just regular random people. So my answer was in reference to regular random people. Now, if somebody in my life like Beverly had ignored my homelessness, yes, that would have been a different story, Jamie.
Well, I would say that the Boy Scout guy was an inner Navy member.
Right. They were both
all the other, well, she wasn't.
She was.
No, she was not.
How was she married to John then?
Because back in those days, you could be married to a person that wasn't in the SO. You could live in SO. You could live in the SO dorm or SO. I'm going to call it fucking birthing because I don't know another word for it.
Birthing's a legitimate word.
Okay, I know, but you could live in SO accommodations, or even SO could live off, if there was money. SO people could live off the base. That they canceled that, but when during the Beverly days, that was the policy. So Beverly,
I didn't know that they could.
Yeah, so Beverly was an interesting person because she wasn't in the SO, but she worked in the Guardian's office and had a regular job. Yeah, and the reason she was
and took time out to care about you and me.
Well, the reason was she was able to put me on her insurance and clean me up and get me medical care and stuff like that at one point when I was 12. I mean, it'd gone on a long time. I'll never forget the day she showed up on a Sunday morning and said, "Hey, we need to get you to a doctor." You know, I was probably 12 years old. It was probably the only time that ever happened in my life. She was working as a paralegal, living in that big Orwellian, blue building with John. So my what I'm saying is this is where I think we disagree. Tell me, is I think it's a real interesting phenomenon. Whereas if you ask this first generation of people, not all of them, but most of them, they try to water down what happened to the kids, and they try to say that we're all the same. And I believe that the reason that they do that is because even if it's justified a little bit why they would do that, they don't want to know. They don't want to admit to themselves that they walk. They walk. Yeah, they don't want to. They don't. So if we're all the same, and whoa, I'm abused just like you, then they don't have to admit to themselves that they ignored it. And so it's very, it's a very protective thing. But I can tell you that, it kind of disheartens me because even within our community, I don't even know if this is a community, even within the group of people that have left this coercive control.
The disaffected. I'm calling us the disaffected now. I forgot all about that word.
Even those people, you know, the what happened to
I'm sorry, real quick. The vegan is saying some things about how it used to be. This is interesting to look at. My sister was SO at CC back in the beginning. She lived unmarried with the MAA in the loft with other people and only a sheet of privacy. Things were different.
Yeah.
And she says routing was a simple sec check and routing out rather. She also married CC Public and moved to his apartment while still being in the Sea Org. She then got a WOG job while still being the SO. Wow, I didn't know you could marry. I didn't know SO members ever could marry non-Muslims.
Listen, you know, there's a lot of talk about, you know,
Master at Arms. Okay.
There's a lot of talk of like, was it worse under the commander, or was it worse now under Dave? And
it's definitely worse under Dave.
Yeah, for sure. But you know, it was still pretty horrible under the commander. The difference is, I don't think, you know, he was had a different motivation. As long as he was making money and able to kind of do what he wanted to do, I don't think he was. I think he had probably a sadistic streak from some of the stories I've heard at the Apollo. But I've also heard he could be a really nice guy. You could say the same thing about Dave. But mostly, I heard, you know, it was still. I would, you know, say that I underwent a form of, you know, I would say between the physiological and the psychological, a form of prolonged torture under the commander. So when I hear people talk about how much worse it is now, I mean, if you were a kid living in the inner core dormitories,
well, I think what we're talking about
under the commander, that was.
I think what we're talking about, though, the difference in what is better or worse than what is worse than what. I mean, I think David Miscavige sort of the presentation of Scientology is much worse. Who they are becoming or whatever it is. I think it was worse back in the old days because it was poor as shit. Like, you're really specifically talking about the living conditions.
Yeah.
The living conditions.
No, not just the living conditions.
And
also
the neglect.
But also the people that were put in charge to, quote, care for us. And the psychological
different types of bad
psychological and physical abuse of that, you know, there was a lot of physical abuse and there was a lot of psychological abuse, and because of the neglect, there was a lot of kids that got taken advantage of. So SA was not incredibly. I've heard a lot of stories of kids that were around back then. There was no one around. There was no line of defense. We were just lingering, right? But you know, anyway. So I feel very strongly that, you know, this idea of what Serge talks about, and he has to say it over and over and over again, because people don't understand or take seriously what these things do to a child mind. Like, what was done to him was very differently what was done to me. Like, he talks about being 12 years old as a prodigy counselor, machine-based counselor, and having grown adults talk about their sex lives. What he hasn't even maybe gone through puberty yet. I don't want to speak for him. But
there's other stories like that.
And there's a ton of stuff like that. Like, that is different than being a public that's 25 years old where you choose to go in. Like, there's a lot of kind of like softening and neglecting of what happened to the kids. It's like, well, you know, what's their problem? They're 40 now. They're in their 40s. It's like,
that's privilege. Look. Anybody. Wait, let me say something. There's a bunch of things I want to say, but anybody looking at somebody recovering and like looking down on them that way is privileged. What you're saying is your damage isn't as bad as mine. If people equalizing, that's what you're pushing against, is this equalizing thing. And you're right, it's not equal, and it's not okay for people.
No, what I'm saying is I lose faith in human understanding on this subject, right? It's not even close. It was a nightmare. I lived it, and I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of kids that lived it. Okay. And I was also on the other side where I hung out with people that didn't live it, were just wealthy public, and what they went through, can be horrible and horrific. And it is so dark what happened to these kids, even some of these public kids that are being told at 2 years old that hey, you're my grandmother that came back. And sorry, I have no time for you, kid. I got to get to Clearwater to do my 6-month check. And, always told they're second best. They're told not to dramatize. They're told not to show emotion. And they're told.
Something like that is incredibly damaging. The way
the
way that you're forced and trained as a child to control and suppress all your feelings, your emotions, just the normal stuff.
Even if you're a wealthy public kid, it could be a sign of psychological torture. And, you have Serge out there and he's repeating it. He's repeating it. And he's repeating it. And people mock it. And they go,
who's mocking Serge?
I'm not down to I'm not really wanting to.
Nobody wants to tell me. Well, I'll tell. I don't even know Serge, but I'll fucking defend him. I'll tell them.
Yeah, I'll tell you who's mocked what was happening to kids. I mean, I don't really, want to. I'm not here to pick a fight. I'm just saying people have mocked what happened to the kids. And
what? Who? Somebody who? That's ridiculous.
It's common.
You tell me later if you want.
I would say it is highly common, and the predominant thought and the predominant mode of action among the first generation of people that from the 70s and 80s and even 60s that chose it. The
older people who joined when they were grown ups. Wait, stop. The older people who joined when they were adults don't understand how much more damaging this is to be brought up.
I would say 98% of them mock us. They mock.
What?
Yeah, I'd say 98% of them
that's evil.
Try to compare themselves to us. I'd say 98% of them. One of the things they're in their 40s now. No, they're in their 40s and they have YouTube, so they have a place to finally talk about it. Okay,
and that's another thing they don't know. Like we were raised this way, where we were never allowed to talk about it. For me and for Vanessa, wait. Oh.
Because we're towards our middle age, it's okay that we were abused. I was watching this documentary on these Catholic priests going around apologizing in this Inuit village or all these remote villages around the world in his robes on these little planes, apologizing to these 60 and 70-year-old men that were essayed as kids by priests. And you would see these 70-year-old men, these 65-year-old men, they would be putty. They would be in tears. They would break. They would just break from the apology. It was at 70. Okay. So what happened to us, many of us, even the ones that weren't in the inner core?
Well, can I say something? Can I say something scientological?
Yeah, but I want to finish one thought.
Okay.
It is astonishing to me that we have to defend and amplify and explain this kind of, in this level and this length of abuse.
Yeah.
Astonishing to me.
Yeah, it's astonishing.
And that 98% of them try to poo-poo it and water it down. And it's astonishing to me. And what it makes me believe, and I said this in one other
is
live,
that they do what you say. You feel like they feel some sort of shame for not having acted or
no,
done
I was
something.
I'm guessing that that's really what's underneath.
No, you're right. Yeah,
but,
that's
yeah. But I guess the question I have for you, Daniel, this is all leading up to a question, is it makes me believe that human beings, unless they see something themselves or an artist brings them into something in a special way, human beings just cannot and will not have empathy or be able to see something that they haven't experienced. Most human beings just do not have that capacity.
I don't know. Let me say
that
something.
about
Yeah, wait, Jamie.
No,
No. Guys, stop. Let me say something.
Okay, go.
I just want to say to you about the empathy thing. This is something I see often in the politics. Like there's this thing about Dick Cheney and the right wing American politics. They're very anti-queer. They're very anti-LGBTQ until Dick Cheney's daughter comes out as a lesbian. And then all of a sudden he understands that queers are people too. And he changes his tune. So that's what you're talking about. People have a general capacity to empathize with people they recognize. People don't have a hard time empathizing with family members. But anything beyond that it's tricky for people. People are not, I don't know. I feel like I feel like empathy is discouraged kind of across the board in our culture, not just in Scientology.
Yeah,
I mean, it's downright shamed and vilified in Scientology.
That statement is a societal.
But I have heard like conservative right-wing people use the word empathy like a dirty word.
Yeah, no, when I made that last statement about most people can't empathize with something they haven't seen. So most people could never imagine what the scenario of being an infant in that machine was like.
Right, but those people should be able to.
Hold on,
but the people you're talking about should be able to imagine.
Yeah. But I'm talking, when I make that statement about most people can't empathize with something they haven't seen, that's a societal statement. Like, I'll give you a perfect example. I'm guilty of that, right? Like, maybe if I would go to Washington Square Park up until you and I reconnected over 15 years ago, and I would see a bum, I'm not thinking about that bum. That bum is invisible to me. Then you and I reconnected over 15 years ago, and we have a really, I think, a special relationship. And now when I go to Washington Square Park, which I do every time I'm in New York, okay, I see a bum, I see them. So I'm not above that. Okay. What's different is these people that are older than us, that this idea, every time I hear that we all went through a rough thing, I think of Serge, and it enrages me. It like every time I hear that comparison from them, it makes me sick to my stomach. I either feel nausea or rage. It is so sickening that they think they understand that. How about get curious? How about if you were there and you looked past it? How about call 100 kids that went through it and interview them, 50, and ask them what it was like?
Well,
again, it doesn't.
This is, and again, this goes back to it is the Scientology training. You're not allowed to. Sympathy is a dirty word, and what vegan here is saying, because we're taught that they're bums by their own actions. We're taught that everybody's responsible for their own conditions. So whatever fucking fucked up shit happened to them doesn't matter. I don't know. This is the problem I've been having since the beginning, is too many of the people, the older people are still acting like Scientologists, still talking like Scientologists, still seemingly thinking like Scientologists. And there doesn't seem to be very much recovery there. There doesn't seem to be, I don't know if any of those people have had therapy or what, but there doesn't seem to be very much change in personalities. And that's not a good thing. Yeah. And that's part of the problem, is because they don't want to see the truth of things. What you're talking about is that they don't want to see the greater damage that was done to children. Yeah. Because they're unwilling to see the truth of things, that stops them from growing and maturing and evolving. You have to see, like the first step is seeing you have a problem. You have to know there's something to reconcile with. You have to know there's something to repair. You have to know there's something to recover from before you can even begin the steps of doing that. And they're resistant to that. And they were trained to be resistant to that. And I don't think fully understand how resistant they still are to that.
And I do think, and then let me ask you this question based on what you just said. You made me think of something. How much is them denying what happened to us? Because I see that as somebody saying that never happened to you. That's how I take it. I think that's how Serge takes it. I don't know. I don't want to speak for him.
That's how abuse. Okay, that's how abuse survivors always feel.
Okay,
you know what I mean.
So my question is,
people are often dismissive, but it doesn't necessarily mean they don't believe.
I know,
that is a tendency to take that way.
Okay, so my question is, what does it do to another person?
Denial is different.
Someone has gone through a massive, extreme amount of torture like that. Psychological manipulation, physical abuse, psychological abuse. And these happen in all sorts of geographies, right? We're talking about Sydney. We're talking about South Florida. We're talking about Los Angeles. We're talking about England, right? We're talking about Denmark. This is happening all over the world, okay? Or all over, the Western world. Okay. But the question is, when you lessen something like that and you're dismissive of something like that, or you're just like, get over it, something like that. What does that do to the individual that that had to live through it, now that it's being lessened, is that a big deal? Are they being re-injured? Are they being double destroyed?
Yes, you're being yes, you're being re-injured. Yes,
and how serious
you were
is
stimulating the trauma.
Is that re-injury a slap in the face, or is that re-injury a shiv in the kidneys? Is it a knife in the?
That's dependent on you. That depends on where you are in your recovery.
Okay.
On how much that will or will not affect you.
Okay. So that's the thing that I find the most bizarre about this group of people that speak out and talk, is just this absolute weirdness of how people talk about the children. I mean, there's a really creepy video out there where there's a guy that's interviewing a former member who is in charge of finance in Florida for the service organization in Florida. And he talks about how he had to keep a slush fund for covering up child SA and adult SA. And that interview is really creepy because the guy has no connection to what he's talking about. It's like, if I had to talk about that, it would be hard for me to talk about that in a way that wouldn't break my heart, where I'm not feeling what that is. But this guy's giggling and he's completely disconnected that these acts happened, that he committed, numerous felonious acts to cover up something that likely destroyed someone's life. And he's just talking about it like it's hilarious and giggly. Very similar to the John Atack and Mike Rinder video. No matter, I don't want to throw those guys under a bus, but it's like that video is just creepy because of how giggly it is. So that's what I'm talking about. Like, we're talking about child SA, and lives being destroyed and ripped apart. And it's like this big jokey giggle fest. And I think that if you're what trauma informed means, because that's been thrown around a lot.
Right. No, that's a problem. That's the problem with the foundation of Mike Rinder, is he's not trauma informed.
Yeah. So
he is the opposite. He seems to be like a walking, breathing.
I'm not even saying those guys are bad guys, because I don't know them, but I'm saying
it's not about who they are. It's about the effect that they create in the universe.
Yeah. Because both those guys have done a tremendous amount of good. Okay. So I don't know, but what I would say is it's not okay to talk about. Not okay. It's social anathema. It's socially obnoxious to talk about the destruction of a child mind and a child body with giggles and.
But they don't see it that way.
I understand that they don't see it that way.
I'm just saying you can't like attach that motivate. You can't like attach that intention there, because they're wait, let me say, I have two other things to say. Yeah. They're laughing partially because they don't see it as serious as it really is, but part of it is a defense mechanism. People laugh stuff off to try to convince themselves that it's not that big a deal. I
just wish that they knew that, because they for all I know, that they're good people, or have good I don't know these people, but I just really wish that they understood when you joke around like something like that
Eyewitness
on a big forum, that's daggers to the people that have experienced something like that. You got to be sober when you have a conversation about these things.
And this is a conversation that Mike Rinder needs to have with you or Serge or someone like that. Because he needs to understand that when he's laughing about whatever he's laughing about, laughing it off like that, it's not actually funny. It's not actually funny. Yeah, and I want to say something. I want to say something about Mike Rinder that I
don't want to throw him under a bus. Like, I'm not.
No. I want to say something. I want to say something about him that was just confirmed for me by somebody who's not even in this conversation, but recently saw the TV show, and she said the same thing I said, which is he's full of shit, except when Leah Remedy holds him to it. The only time he cops to anything is when she forces him to. So I still think that man is in denial. I still think he is in denial about the effects, the harm that he has created, that he has, put on people. And I don't think it would be very easy for him to really see the truth of the harm that he's really done, because it's vast. And I think the bigger the thing to confront, the harder it is to confront. And somebody on here was just saying it took decades. Sometimes it takes decades. It took me decades to even understand there was something to reconcile with.
Yeah, I mean, he also has done a lot of good. The problem is that he's been kind of I'll apologize for him for a second. He's been kind of booby trapped. He grew up in this bubble, and then I think he even graduated high school before he went to the Apollo, but he was still in the bubble before he went. So he's only known this bubble. Then he gets out, and then he gets this TV show, and then he basically gets cleansed, or at least like on the outside. Well, you have an Emmy, okay?
Yeah.
And
I said that from the beginning. I think that he's
show.
Just writing off of the goodwill.
Well, I don't even think he's writing off of it. I think that
off the will of good Leah Remini.
No, but I also think the mainstream media, it's so inside baseball, they could never understand the ringer that guy's been through and the ringer that he's put people through. So they could never understand that. So he's accepted by the mainstream media. And then if you're only know this bubble and the mainstream media accepts you, maybe your equation is, I'm cool, I'm acceptable. And then that
is the mentality. It doesn't matter what's true. It just matters what it looks like, kind of thing.
Yeah. But the reality,
if the majority of who's looking at him thinks that he's a hero in the story, media, then he can convince himself that he is
exactly. But the problem is that the mainstream media and then YouTube, the new media, operate very, very differently. The mainstream media, they're not going to understand that inside baseball. People that follow this stuff heavily on YouTube, they're going to understand the inside baseball, and they're going to say no. We don't agree. Not okay. And that's the problem, right? So to me, the statute of limitations and all this stuff is run out. It would just be better. There's all this talk about going to law enforcement and talk to the FBI. And we talk to the FBI and this, that, the other. And it's like, to me, it's not about that. It's not about punishment. It's about.
Yeah, I've said that already. I don't give it. I don't even want to know. I don't even want to know. It's not like I even think he has to confess to anybody except to himself.
No, I'm not talking about him.
I think that's the problem. I don't think he's even gotten, I don't think he's even been totally honest with himself yet.
Yeah.
And that's a hard step.
Yeah. What I'm saying is that, and I don't know if you would agree with this, is that I think it would be healthy for all of us to kind of know what was done. How relentless was it? How relentless how many essays were there? How many were covered?
What does L. Ron Hubbard say about a lie on the line?
Yeah. So I think it would just be for people that grew up on the business end of this thing. Okay. Raise your hand. It would be I don't care what was said to the FBI. I want to know how this thing happened, how it was made to happen, how it worked. I think it would be incredibly cathartic for me to have a lot of information, to have as much information as possible on that.
Yeah.
But the people that have that information won't give it. They only feel a responsibility to give it to the FBI. And my view, if they gave all of it at all, my view, and I'm not talking about him, there's other people. Claire was really high up in RTC for a number of years. What did she see? I'm not trying to throw her under a bus. Amy Scobie was WDC. What did she see? I'm not trying to throw these guys under a bus. I'm pleading to them and telling them, hey guys, I grew up on the business end of this thing. My family's been destroyed. A couple of my brothers have been practically destroyed. What was going on up there that allowed this to happen to us? What were the inner workings of this thing? I would find
it's kind of crazy, Jamie. But let me say something. It's kind of crazy.
Let me say this last thing. I would find that incredibly cathartic and incredibly healing.
Yeah.
And this is what I would want you to comment on, and then say whatever you want. Is I feel that the responsibility to the people that were victimized, those people getting all of the information, the responsibility to get that information to all of those people is far more important than giving some information to the FBI.
Yeah.
Give the information to the victim so they
and I think that yes, and I think that's the problem. And it's all this. Wait, stop. It's the thing I did. It's secrets and lies, and that's the problem. And as long as there's secrets and lies, the question persists. We're going to continue to go, what happened? I'll tell you, when Nora explained to me that my father used to ghost me because he was being punished for talking to me for going PTS to the third class, to the middle class and all this, like that meant a lot to me. That doesn't fix it. It doesn't fix it. Doesn't make it better. But yeah, it is cathartic to understand that he wasn't just, he didn't just hate me. There was other forces pushing him in a direction. away.
Yeah, and because we have these camps, right? Like just based on what you said, like because we have these camps that are at odds, which is very much how we were raised, the white hats and the black hats, which team are you on? They're the enemy, we're on this side, right? We end up missing the point, right? So if I mention a name, if I say Mike or Claire or Amy, I'm instantly, oh, well, he's got an axe to grind. He's going after them. He's on the other camp. Okay. And I'm not in a camp. I don't have any ill will towards those people.
We're in the mustard camp.
I'm more like pleading to them. Hey, let us know. Let's do some videos. Claire, Amy, Mike, I'll do videos with all three of you. If you're willing to talk about what happened out there that allowed for this kind of suffering, and what are the inner workings of that? What was done? What did you see? I don't want, all the statute of limitations. It doesn't matter. Like, and you were ordered to do it by this crazy guy or crazy guys. Like, I get it. But I think what's not being talked about is how much relief could occur if we understood all the machinations of it. And because instantly, if I say that name, I'm against them. No, I'm willing. If you don't want to do a video, call me up. Let's have a conversation about it. Tell me privately what happened up there. I'll sign an NDA. I'd like to understand more of how this happened.
We all need to know, though. We all need to know. We all need
because
to know exactly what they're up to, and especially the embarrassing stuff, especially the stuff they're ashamed of, especially the stuff they're afraid to talk about. That's the stuff we need to know, and they don't understand that we are, or you particularly in Surge, and the kids, were so much more victimized. Yeah, it's a whole nother level of victimization.
Yeah, and I think that they're like, and then again, there's a lot of lies on this thing. Like we have this camp of like people that are in the current SCNs and then the ex-SCNs. Like, and I see this dynamic of that. This is how it's talked about. Like the ex-SCNs are, quote, a group, or a, quote, third dynamic, which just means a group. Okay. There's a lot of weird way they alter language in this movement. Like the word sympathy is a horrible word. It means you're close to being a devil if you're sympathetic towards others. Reasonable is a bad word. A reasonable person is a weak person. An unreasonable person is somebody that's not weak. Reasonable is considered a bad word. So they really mess with your head and they mess with language. But when I see how top organizations are taken down, like we have RICO to take down conspiracies, right? And when you see that, you see they take down the top 10 to 15 people at the top, or 15 to 30 people at the top. And then they flip the lower people to take out John Gotti. Or the way they're going to get Diddy is they're going to get all these people that were executing for him. They're going to offer them immunity to go on Diddy. Right. And so I don't see this thing of X, not X. What I see is based on somebody that, again, grew up at, being ground up in this thing, that shouldn't really, I'm a survivor, I hate that word, but like, I'm somebody that probably shouldn't be.
You shouldn't.
Here. Yeah. And every time I think that's a ridiculous thing to say, I look at how many kids, were in that red brick building on Melrose that aren't around anymore. And, I thank my lucky stars. Okay. But what I see is anybody that was up there in that inner circle should not be welcome around victims until they've told those victims everything they know. That's part of what's needed to heal. So there's different classes. There's people that were in, there's ex people that were in, but that level of people that were up in the desert compound, that were in the immediate top 30, that's a whole different class of human being. And they have an idea and notion that they can waltz out, and if they want to help people, they can just go help people, and they're going to help people the way that they want on their time with their thoughts, and we're going to like it, which is a very executive point of view. It's a very international RTC leadership of SCN Inter Navy point of view. To me, anybody that was in that top 30 has a responsibility to come to the victims and say what they did long before they go to the FBI. The FBI is irrelevant. The FBI hasn't done anything. And, there are some that do. There's this guy named Gary Jackson Moorhead, who is the security chief up there. And he's incredible the way he'll talk about it. I don't know him, but he'll say things like, I was a Nazi war guard. He'll say it. He'll call himself that. And then that guy even said to me, and then he says this all the time, so I don't think he'd mind me saying it because I admire it. He says, if I have to go to jail for the things that I've done, then I will. Now, he doesn't have to. The statute of limitations, it's not about, hurting people. I don't want anybody's life destroyed. These people, most of these perpetrators are also victims. But no one talks about.
And he's apologizing.
There's nuance to these groups. You don't have SCNs and ex-SCNs. Anybody that was in that inner circle in the top 30 is not in the same category. And this idea that they're talked about in the same category is ridiculous. Okay. And anybody in that top 30 that's out now, even if it was 20 years ago, that hasn't talked about it and explained to victims what happened up there in very, very detailed, nuanced ways, I think, we need to be careful of. Okay. It doesn't make any sense. Okay. And again, the excuse is always, I talk to the FBI, like, there's people out there suffering, like, the AA thing, right? What does talking to the FBI do for a victim's healing?
One of the steps in AA is exactly what you're talking about.
Well, explain it.
Going to the people that you harmed and copping to the things that you did and apologizing and making amends if you can.
Okay, and so it's
high fat Grammy.
Yeah, so it's disheartening to watch,
and that's what you're talking about. That's what they need to do. It is the sort of like.
Yeah, but the thing is, when I say
and like you said about those old men that needed to hear those priests say, "Yes, I did this to you."
Yeah.
It's the gaslighting. And Noah Trevor talks about this and the difference in the way that South Africa dealt with apartheid, that they copped to it. They apologized. They acknowledged. They said, yes, these things happened. Yes, we did these things to you. America won't do that. Scientology won't do that. The people you're talking about aren't doing that.
If you ever read the apology written by the Prime Minister of Australia, either in the 90s or the early aughts, apologizing to the
Aboriginals.
Yeah. And one of the things they did is if you were mixed like me, you were separated from your family. You were separated from your family, right? This is one of the things included when you read that apology. That's an apology, and that's somebody that's saying, that's what an apology is. And I think that apology, even if you were a victim, if you were also a perpetrator, I don't think that there's a lot of awareness of the people. Because the minute I say those names and there's these two camps and there's these battles going on, I'm putting myself on one side of the camp, in one of the camps, and I'm attacking these individuals. And I'm not, because I don't know them. So I can believe that there's good in all of them. I can say that, and I've said this before numerous times.
Look, if somebody hears speaking truth as an attack, that's on them. That's them.
But again, sometimes you could speak truth with a 2x4. I don't want to force somebody with threats and anger to tell me what happened. I'm not looking to do that. I'm looking to grant grace and to grant, deference.
Here, Susie Q just said something relevant. My mom is admitting to stuff and I'm 53. It matters. It matters. And this is one of the things that infuriated me about my mother is I started trying to ask her about stuff when I first came to New York, and she just denied everything. She didn't remember, or she couldn't. I don't remember, but oh no. And she just didn't want to believe anything.
Yeah. I mean, and again, like, I don't know Mike Rinder, but I will say this, Mike Rinder, I don't know Mike Rinder. I'm afraid for what he's done, but I'll also say he helped me in 2009.
He's helped me too.
Tampa Bay Times article, finding out what was going on up there, knowing the specifics of what was going on up there allowed me to finally be public for the first time, right? Then I would say the Aftermath show, again, thanking Mike Rinder and Leah, that put it into the mainstream in a way that a lot of my embarrassment and humiliation because it was in the zeitgeist, because it became part of the culture, and it took some of the weird out. Then that has allowed me to be even more public about it and have conversations like this, which I thought I would never have before I died. I was going to die with this stuff.
Me too.
Right. So,
Me too.
So you have these very mixed feelings, you know, where you're like grateful to these people that helped you, but you're also like, what happened? And if you want to understand how we're hurting, then read that, go online and Google that apology. Google the apology to the Australian, to the Prime Minister of Australia. You know, he's apologizing for hundreds of years, but you know, and it'll show you what knowing what happened to you, because like what Susie Q just said, and what the Tampa Bay Times article did for me, because what that did was I was experiencing all of this force, trying to kind of have a relationship with my mother and my brother, and kind of half in, half out, foot in, foot out, and just all of this volatile force on terms of threats and finance, and it was really brutal. The library campaigns. And then when those guys came out in 2009 and said what was going on up there, all of that made sense. And I was able to kind of understand my experience, and that took a lot of the pain away. I don't totally know what happened in the mid 80s in terms of what was going on up there when they were talking about kids. I don't know what was going on in the 90s in terms of, you know, I know Jenny Linson came down in 96 and was assigning people to the RPF in, you know, on top of the parking structure in the most brutal, savage ways you could imagine on a, quote, ethics mission. What was going on up there at that time? Was Claire there? Does she know what was going on up there at that time? Like, I don't even know if she's even thought that it would help us and heal us for us to talk about it. It may not even be something that's occurred to her because she was up there. You know, for her to come out and just go, hey, you know, this is what was going on when she was sent down to, you know, Los Angeles, when Jenny was sent down to Los Angeles in 96, this is what was going on up there. It may not even occur to her or Amy that might help us to understand. Okay. But that was a really brutal time for me. My mother got caught up in that, who I have a very, you know, ambivalent relationship with in terms of how I see her. She got assigned to the RPF. She's a diabetic. She couldn't survive it. She couldn't survive the diabetes on the RPF. I told the RPF I see like that, and he told me he was going to hit me every time. And then I went to see Megan Shields, and she's telling me, if your mother continues on this program, she's going to die. You know, Jenny didn't care. The people that were running the program didn't care. What was going on at this desert compound in Hemet when that brutality was going on towards these staff members, right? The other thing that people don't understand, because it's so inside baseball, is that the inner core people, what they call the C people, they're treated the worst. You would think that the most dedicated people would be treated well. The people that are working 20-hour days would be treated well.
Well, again, this is the nature of abuse. You know, you have the bully on the schoolyard picking on little kids. That's because there's a grown-up at home picking on him.
I mean, it's a good point. I mean, if you look back and you read about, say, the you know, concentration camps, they would have like boss, the Jews that would run the other Jews for the guards. And if you read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, he talks about how those guys were far more cruel than the guards themselves.
Because they were more ashamed. Somebody made a movie about it.
Yeah.
And then, very good movie.
It's also true for chattel slavery. If you went to the plantation, there was like the boss slaves that worked for the slave masters. That was the black slave boss.
Right, like Sam Jackson. Jackson in
Django. He was also far more cruel.
He was wicked. He's wicked.
So I don't think people could imagine. Again, it goes to my disheartening feeling that most people cannot imagine something they haven't seen. And I just think it's hard for regular people to imagine that the people that are the most dedicated to this thing in the inner core, how much they're controlled and how much they're abused. And that's a reason to have deep sympathy for Amy, Mike, and Claire. Okay, deep sympathy and empathy. But maybe they haven't told us what happened up there during these really brutal times, during the library campaign, during these brutal times, because we haven't asked them. But so I don't really want, there's no one's going to jail. The stats, you know, no one's, these things are all too old. Statute, like I'm just more curious. I got so much relief from the Tampa Bay Times article. I want to know more of what was going on. And I want to know what was going on 10 years before that when my family was suffering, And I want to know what was going on in the late 80s in terms of the RTC and international policy towards the children, because my friends, some of which are not longer around anymore, were suffering. I just want to know. And me attacking those people or fighting those people or battling those people is not going to get that information for me. I think that we need a reconciliation.
Reconciliation, exactly. The words come up a couple of times here.
Yeah.
Somebody was saying in Canada they have a national reconciliation for Indigenous children.
Yeah. I mean, and it's so strange what the mothership does, because they spend so much money on these lawsuits. If they took 5% of what they spend on lawsuits a year, they could have a several $1 million educational fund to give educational grants and scholarships to the kids that grew up under this thing, not going to school at all, like me, like my friends.
Yeah, you're right. They could have actually invested in actually taking care of children.
Like if you look at the Mormon church, like it used to be their policy to not have Black people as priests because they bore the mark of Cain. Well, when the internet came around or the mass media came around, the Mormons figured it out. Like, this is not sustainable. And now Black people can be priests, right? The Catholic Church has had to pay a lot of money to hundreds of billions of dollars to reconcile this stuff, right? Yeah. So, I'm just saying we need a reconciliation. And I do not believe, I'm with Serge in the sense that I believe that unless we go after the individuals that participated in these crimes, as Miriam Francis says, beliefs do not commit crimes, people do. Who are these top 30? What did they see? What did they know? They should be the emphasis, not just the Borg or just Dave. Who are those 30 at the top? What did they know? When were they there? What did they do? That should be our first. If you want to bring down this Borg, you have to focus on those individuals and what they did. That is what RICO is. Now, there will probably never be a RICO case because of the religious protections of the First Amendment.
We have to get Scientology redesignated as a cult and not a religion. That's what I was talking about the other day.
Yeah, but
Supreme Court. Wait.
Yeah.
But no, I think that's the only way to beat them.
But my point,
the big lie, big lie is that they pretend to be a religion when they're not. And so they get protections, but also even the way you talk about it, it's not a religion.
My point is that if we concentrated before we got to the Borg, they need to be confronted too. But really what we're talking about, these top 30 or 40 people, right? If we concentrated on those individuals, what they did, what they knew, some of them are criminals, some of them aren't. I guarantee you a lot of them aren't, okay? But if we found out what they did, what they knew, just the truth of that, of those specific crimes, what they did, how long they were sustained for, I believe just that knowledge would bring this thing down. I think that knowledge would cause a congressman or Congress to intervene, right? Yeah. But no one will share it. And it's always like we have to bring.
But the truth.
Every time
the truth was that you.
Let me say this last thing. Every time I hear someone says they need to bring Scientology down, which I don't even believe is a thing, okay? What I hear, I just think of Team America World Police. We got to get the terrorists, right? It's a Borg. It's like a war on drugs or a war on homelessness. Like you can have a campaign on those things, but those things are never going to end. You want to bring this thing, you want to bring down the beast, you got to look at those top 40 and start dissecting those top 40 people over the last 40 years. That's all that's going to, if you don't do that, it never comes down. As long as this is about a Borg and it's about beliefs, it stays intact and as long as kids, the most vulnerable part of our population, are dismissed in terms of what happened to them, as long as those things are in place, this thing lives forever. So I feel like sometimes, I feel like this movement, until it starts concentrating, and that's where I disagree. And that's where I kind of agree with Nora. I don't look at people that came from that base as ex-members. They're a whole different classification. And I think, Nora wants to focus on these people. I think, and Serge has done it. I think that's the only way. It doesn't mean I don't. Nora does stuff all the time that I hate. I can't stand some of her content. And when she does something I don't like, I call her and tell her. Serge does things all the time that I don't like. And, but on those points, I don't disagree with them. But the reality is I disagree with you tons of times. I don't need to agree with everyone. And they might be right and I might be wrong. So it doesn't matter if we disagree. But on the subject of the kids and on the subject of we need to start looking at the people that did this over the last 40 years and who that inner core was of 30 to 40 people, because that's how they're bringing down Diddy. If this is another good example of it, take Jeffrey Epstein, Danny. Okay. Say Jeffrey Epstein had lived. Okay. Ghislaine Maxwell would not be in jail because she would have gotten immunity for testifying against him. Right. But when he died, now she's in jail for the rest of her life for 25 years or whatever it is. Okay. That's how these cases go. You bring in the top 40 and you offer immunity to these people. Right. But these guys don't even think that they need immunity because a lot of the people that were up there that are now out because they grew up in the bubble, they don't know. In California and Florida, if you cover up a felony, it's a felony. There's something called accessory after the fact. Hearing a crime and not reporting it, you become part of that crime. Yeah. Right? Because we grew up in a bubble, a lot of these guys don't even know that if they look the other way to felonies or they look to the other way to crimes, that they have something to confess. They don't even know it. And then we get into this idea of crimes. Right? Some of the worst things that you could ever do to a human being are not in the statutes as a crime. What my mother did to me, sending me to this baby machine in downtown LA slum, was not illegal. The human trafficking laws that might have protected me.
Well, it's illegal to endanger the welfare.
Okay, but yeah,
on the other end of it's more about the result than the action.
My point is that the human trafficking laws that would have protected my life did not exist till the early 2000s. The TVPA law, the Trafficking Violation Protection Reformation Act, or whatever it's called. I think it's called TVPA. And it's been modified a lot of times. That's a new law. You can't, right? So what my mother did wasn't illegal. Maybe some of the things that some of these executives did wasn't, quote, illegal. Okay.
Right. But it's again, it's not the actions is what the actions led to.
It destroyed. So like neglect. Mass abortions would obviously destroy lives, but it would obviously destroy lives. The last thing I'll say is if you watch that John Ringer video, John Attack puts a lot of emphasis on like Mike Rinder not coming up to breaking the law. It's not about breaking the law. Like within the law of the Australian laws at the time, what they did was legal. It's about, did you commit an act that would mentally and physically destroy a human being, whether legal or not at the time?
The question is about how much harm or the destruction
that
caused, not the legality of it.
I feel like because of our programming, because of our programming, we don't talk about this stuff, Danny. In an honest way. Like we're not talking about what's actually gone on here. We're talking about it within these constructs of X and not X and crimes and not crimes. That's not the correct construct. It needs to be talked about against psychological and physiological damage, and it needs to be talked about who was there in any group. They're going to bring Diddy down because they're going to get the facilitators immunity to flip. That's how they're going to bring Diddy down. Okay, that's what RICO is. Okay, that's how they got John Gotti. It was through Sammy the Bull Gravano, walked away from 26 murders because he flipped on Gotti, the Teflon Don. Right. So again, I'm sure that the people that I'm pleading to don't think that they committed any crimes and don't think that they have anything to say.
Well, I think your point is really the greater point is not about crimes. It's about what actions they took or what crimes they turned a blind eye to that led to
would cause so much healing
that were harmful, destructive.
Yeah, and I would take
yes. And your point is yes.
And I will take a private phone call from any of them that wants to share this stuff with me, and I will make a promise and give my word that if they ask me to whatever they tell me to be private, that I won't speak about it if that's what they want. And I won't share it on the internet, and I won't share it with others if they're willing to share it with me, because I want to know. I want to know what happened in 96 when Jenny was doing what she was doing in Los Angeles. Right. So anyway, that over to you, Denny. You have a lot. We should probably open it up to questions. I went way longer than I agreed. I'm tired.
Okay. Yeah, you went on a tirade. I couldn't get a word in edgewise there. Do you want to go to comments? They're talking about Epstein here. Proper education would blow the lid off the entire con.
But unless you're willing to talk about that top 40, this whole premise of bringing this thing down is a lie. That's
well, I think again, I was saying the only way I think to bring it down is to define these words. Lenny Bruce is famously fought.
What was that comment? It was up, then it was gone.
It was that. I read it out loud.
Okay.
Proper education would blow the lid off the entire con. Anyway, we had a Supreme Court ruling about profanity because of Lenny Bruce. We had a Supreme Court ruling about pornography because of Mapplethorpe. And we need a Supreme Court ruling on religion, the difference between religion and cult, just as we have a Supreme Court ruling on the difference between nudity in pornography for the purpose of titillation and nudity in the context of art. There is a difference between those things. And I think we need to define those things. And I think that's the problem, because we still use these words like church and religion, but it's not a church or a religion. And that's how it gets away with what it gets away with.
Yeah, well, the First Amendment's powerful, but I think rather than trying to attack the First Amendment.
No, and I didn't say attack the First Amendment.
I know, but what we should do rather than like attack religious protections is
I'm not talking about attacking religious protections.
I know. But
I'm talking about defining things for what they really, describing things for what they really are.
System takes it right now under existing law.
That's why I'm talking about changing the law.
Yeah, but what's the law that needs to be changed?
That's what Robert. That's what happened with Robert Mapplethorpe. That's what happened with Lenny Bruce.
Yeah, they just need to augment and say, hey, if you do these acts against a child, the religious protection doesn't count. It would be that simple.
I don't think that
But anyway,
no, Jamie. The problem is again, the acts themselves are not illegal. So neglect of a child or abuse of a child is illegal, but the acts themselves individually aren't illegal. I don't think. I think that's how they get away with it. Okay. And then there's very little investigation into what those acts are and how they lead to illegality, how they lead to abuse because of religious protections. What I'm saying on your note about taking down the big tent, if we're going to take it down, that's how you do it. Not through legal, not through attacking their behaviors. The behaviors are all fuzzy and questionable and debatable and arguable. So let's take away the thing that protects them. Let's take away the thing that shields them.
I think that's important, but I think what would cause that to happen,
I think that's the whole game.
The only thing that could ever do that is the top 40. What did these 40 guys that have come out, the top, or are in, what did they participate in? What did they see? What did they turn a blind eye to? What did they know? If those people revealed that, not to the FBI, but to the world, this thing would crumble down. That's what I believe. And until you go after that top 40s for the specific individuals that saw the specific things, that did the specific things, the whole thing's a joke. Okay. And
no, Jamie, we are having different conversations. So you're talking about if all the truth came out, then the world would see how awful the behaviors of this organization
are. And then we could change those
laws. And then we could change those laws. What I'm saying is redefine the organization. It is not a religion.
I know,
we don't have to stop. We don't have to circumvent the protections of religion if we call it for what it truly is.
And
it is not a religion.
Understand the top 40, what I'm going to call the top 40 over the last 40 years.
We're having very different conversations.
It's too inside baseball. They'll never do it. If you want them to redefine it, they have to understand all the nuance of what's gone on over the last 40 years from the last 40 people at the top next to the two leaders.
No, I just want them to define religion. The fact of the matter is our Supreme Court is stacked conservative religious
we have
people
to disagree
who are very into.
I don't think
wait, let me finish a fucking sentence, Jamie.
Okay.
People who would be very into protecting their definition of religion. Scientology doesn't actually fall into their definition of religion, Jamie.
But I don't think
if those people, if actually genuinely religious people were pressed to define what that means, Scientology would not be defined as a religion anymore.
Well, we will never.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and
that's all I'm saying.
When I was saying the world will never know that unless we look at these top 40 over the last 40 years and what they knew and what they saw. Otherwise,
I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about
I know exactly what you're talking about.
I don't think you do.
Inside baseball. Most of the
what?
stuff.
No, okay, then no, you don't understand what I'm saying because nothing I've said is inside baseball. No, I'm not talking about anybody having to know the fucking ins and outs of Scientology. I'm talking about defining religion because religions are different than Scientology already, Jamie. We don't have to point that out.
That's never gonna happen. The whole point of
but it happened. It's happened 2 times. I just gave you 2 examples of where that very thing happened and completely changed the culture.
The whole point of religion is that you can't define religion, right? No, there's a lot of people that I meet there's a lot of people that have come out of this thing that are ex-members that see it as a religious experience
because they're wrong and they're wrong,
and they even though they hate it, right? So. And for them, who am I to say it wasn't? What I'm saying.
It wasn't.
I'm going to repeat this. The only way to ever bring this thing down, what is the protests are doing a great job. I'll include the protests in that. Is the protests and defining who these top 40 are over the last 40 years and finding out what they know, and all the nuance, legal or illegal. If that stuff were exposed, this thing would crumble. No, because what is sitting there, whether it's legal, illegal, is social anathema. It's social obnoxious, and Congress would get involved. That is the shortest distance between 2 points. But anyway,
that's what you're describing is too inside baseball, Jamie.
No,
you're talking about.
Okay, I gotta go. We're gonna answer questions. All right, we'll end this on a disagreement, even though.
Don't we always?
Okay, I gotta go. Are we taking questions, or can I just go?
You are a free individual.
See if there's any questions.
There's lots of questions.
Well, let's bring them up.
Jamie, the politicians are corrupt, says the Vegan 3. I don't know where to start here. I don't know what this means. The path to federal RICO for Scientology is clearer now than ever.
Well, that's Whitney. She said something to me a few months ago, and I disagreed with her. And I want you to know, I'll call you, Whitney. I actually think you're right. I disagreed with you when you said it to me a couple months ago. I don't want to get into it on here, but I will call you. And what you said to me a couple months ago that I disagreed with, I've now changed my mind, and I think that I was wrong and you were right. So, Whitney, I apologize. Moving on.
You're not going to tell us?
No, I don't want to.
Vegan 3 says, we still haven't seen the list from Epstein. The channel talking most about Diddy is saying the same thing about Diddy. They claim names are coming.
You'll see.
They keep claiming. Yeah. I don't know if I give a shit about Diddy.
Well, if you're one of his victims, you would.
Yeah, U.S. Rule of law, there is chain of evidence. Don't use gossip and suspicion.
But again, for me, it's about saying what happened, illegal or not illegal. I think it would bring the whole thing down. Top 40 individuals over the last 40 years.
I think them coming clean would be cathartic for all involved. I think it'd be cathartic for them and you and us and all of us.
Yeah, we'd all be.
I don't know if that's going to bring the church. I don't know if that's going to bring.
What about that last comment?
Okay. Let's see. Failure to report abuse is a crime. Oh yeah, we knew that already. I don't know. I'd have to read the comments to be able to select one. So somebody's saying there's no kids in there now under 15 and 16.
I don't know that that's true.
Spiritual abuse is an issue.
And the reality is, Marcy Hamilton would say the human brain is not developed until 26. So she, in terms of Child USA and their doctrine of all these lookbacks, they don't consider someone to be an adult till 26. So whether they're 15 or 18, part of the things that helped me to see it was, meeting a 19-year-old kid and then thinking what I was under at 19 and what they were doing to me at 19, and then seeing a 19-year-old kid now as a middle-aged man and going, oh my God, I was a baby, Yeah.
Power lies to paralyze is not because
because
anyone. I don't know. I don't know about infiltrate to take down every religion, but Scientology is physically abuse of microcontrol. It's not a religion.
Again,
my point is that this doesn't pertain to actual.
Top 40 people over the last 40 years in the inner core who name them and they're not going to. It's all most of it's the statute of limitations. I don't think so. I don't want to out anybody, so I'm not wanting to dox anyone. But the ones that have come out, please share with us. I'm not going to dox anybody. I'm not looking to go after anybody. I'm asking you to come to me or come to us and share and search your brain and say, okay, there's a lot of nuanced things that maybe aren't illegal that I saw that would help you understand yourself better. I don't think but maybe when you're in that bubble at that base and you're knocking the crap out of each other, you don't understand how that's infiltrating down to the people below. So you can't, because you're experiencing something.
I don't think a lot of those people even understand how much that's infiltrated their own selves. Okay. I don't think a lot of those people understand how much of the psychological damage they're all still involved in. The FBI has seen and noted the pattern, not just y'all, FLDS abuse of kids on forefront as well. We must stop the current abuse. But I see how Jimmy feels. Look, here's my thing. Like, and I keep saying this, like the essay and the child abuse, the trafficking, stuff like that. Those are very tactile things. They're very easy things to understand for anybody to understand. They're bad things. But that doesn't get at the heart of what I think is the problem, which is that this thing that is not a religion gets to claim that it is.
No one will ever know that unless we do the top 40 people and what they knew.
I just don't understand. I don't understand why exposing the crimes of the organization is what is necessary, as though we don't already know enough.
No, we don't.
We already know it.
No.
I think we do. I think we know more. Wait, let me finish a sentence. Let me finish a goddamn sentence. I do not think. Oh no, I forgot what else.
Listen, everybody. Let's take Gary Jackson, who's been one of the few people that's been honest. Okay, if Gary Jackson came out and did a video. A series of videos where he redacted the names and told 15 stories of 15 people that he tracked down and brought back and what was done to them with redacting the names. That nuance and that chronic nature of that nuance would completely change the understanding. That's what's needed. That's the only thing that's going to change the laws, period. And everybody knows what he did because he's one of the few people that's been honest. Okay, so everybody knows what's
Look, Jamie, you're talking about changing the laws to regulate something that is calling itself a religion. That's a much harder lift.
What I'm saying is, you take
that's a much harder lift than what I'm talking about.
You take somebody like Debbie Cook, where she was a hero with when she sent that letter in and she did all this damage and blah 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 blah. Well, she ain't a hero if you're Serge, because Serge saw what was happening to kids under her watch. I was a kid under her watch. In South Florida, okay, I don't see her as a hero, right? What did Debbie see children being exposed to? What did she make children exposed to? What is that nuance? Who are these top 40? She's one of them. Who are these top 40 commanders? And what did they see? And what's the nuance? That's the only way this thing comes down. That and the protests, okay? But the protests would have a lot more to work with if we had that top 40. The hits. Okay, top 40 people over the last 40 years. What's the nuance? I guarantee you, Gary Jackson does 15 videos on very specific stories where he redacts the names. We have all the.
I think all of that would help you and me and us and the victims of this. I don't think it would bring it down legally. I don't think it would bring it down at all. I don't think it would move. I don't think it would move the needle slightest.
Well, you're annoying the shit out of me
because what you're asking is exactly what you say is the problem, which is too inside baseball.
No.
You're literally saying, stop. You're literally saying, let's add more nuance. Let's add more complication. Let's add more to a conversation that people are already.
Gary Jackson.
Nice, stop, Jamie. Come on, man.
No, Gary Jackson telling a story of exactly how he tracked people down, how he used technology to do this.
This is no fun.
You're not hearing me, but that's fine.
I'm not hearing you, son.
No, the nuance stuff is the only stuff that isn't inside baseball, jackass. But
then I don't know what the word nuance means, dude.
Okay.
Then forget it.
Okay.
Because that's what it sounds like you're saying. Or maybe I don't know what the phrase inside baseball means. But you're not making sense to me right now, and you're pissing me off that you keep shouting over me.
No. Okay, Danny, I'm going to say it again. The only thing that brings this thing down is if the top 40 people say what they knew.
Do you understand, Jamie, one thing. Do you understand that you were being a Scientologist by saying that the way you're saying it?
All right.
The only way to bring this down is how I say. You sound like L. Ron Hubbard.
No. Okay, thank you. And you sound like L. Ron Hubbard by not listening to anything I say. Okay, Dan Ron Hubbard. Okay, I'm saying that if the specific stories were known, if we had 15 stories, I mean, I think Gary told me he brought hundreds of people back. If we had 15 of those stories with nuance and people could see what that looked like in specifics over time, that would be so notional anathema, so socially obnoxious that if we had the top 40 people or a big percentage of them doing that, the whole thing would crumble. I don't think that's L. Ron Hubbard. I think that's common sense.
No, the way you said, no, stop misrepresenting what I said. It's you insisting that what you're saying is the only way to do it. That's what I meant by L. Ron Hubbard, not the context of what you're saying. Either way, if you said, and if we can get people to understand, that's a big if, Jamie. That's the whole point. That's the problem, right? Wait, stop. I can see you already starting.
Well,
Stop, please.
No, I want to get off the call.
Stop. That's already the problem, Jamie, is that people don't see. We already have 15 stories. We have 30 stories. We have 1,000 stories.
No, we don't have stories.
And already people don't see, Jamie.
I do not.
You said if we can get people to see that, if we can put that down, the nuanced stories.
I don't know.
I don't think that we can get people to see that, Jamie. That's the problem I see.
That's why we need the top 40 to share these individual stories. We didn't.
Why are the individual stories from the Aftermath TV show not enough? Why weren't those stories enough?
Because those aren't from the base around the inner circle. That's where the RICO case is. Okay, that's what we need to know. You go to the Aftermath show, find one specific story that Mike Rinder tells on that show about what was going on at the international base. No, you're not going to bring this thing talking about the victims. You're going to bring this thing with the top 40 people talking about what they saw and what they did and the nuance of it. You get Gary Jackson doing a video series called Tracking Down People for Scientology, and then every week he redacts the name and does a video where he talks about how he infiltrated the flight records and he showed up at people's aunts' houses and the money that was put forward. You get 20 of those stories on that, then you get 20 childcare stories. If you want to Google something horrifying, Google Sheila Huber's story about the child care of the children. We start documenting this stuff in a very aggressive way, but the top 40 at the base, the international base in Hemet, California, this compound, people see that documented, that nuance. I believe that with the continued protests, there's no room to breathe. Okay.
Again, what another problem I see with this is everything you're talking about is the past. And I believe the Scientology line already is that things are different now.
Well, it was 200 years before the Australians apologized. It was 100.
Right. So, okay. So now you've pivoted to a different conversation.
No, I haven't.
So wait, stop. My response to you just then was to a different conversation than the Australian apology.
Okay.
What you were saying to me is we want nuanced stories about the things that have been done. Again, my response to that comment is those are things that were done in the past, and already the Scientology line is that things have changed. Stop.
Go read the Australian apology. There's new
right, and again, Jamie, the apology you're looking for is a completely different conversation.
It's not. Part of the apology is an accounting.
Part of.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
So that's part of it. Okay, but I'm telling you, if you had 2 years of people.
What I'm saying is, if you're top 40,
I want to go, but I'm going to say this: if you had 2 years of all these channels and these people that were involved in these things in the international desert compound over the last 40 years, willingly coming out and sharing through grace and deference, and what the nuance of what occurred, I think this thing would crumble very quickly. That is my view. As long as we attach a faceless Borg, it's not going to go anywhere. Or it's going to go a lot slower. The protests are the one thing that I feel like is doing more than I've ever seen in my life. So I don't want to despair. I don't want to lessen that. But that's what I think this is. That's the problem with this whole thing is we're going after a Borg. This is what Scientology does. No, this is what John Jackson did, or John Thompson did on this day in this thing, this nuanced thing that you never heard of. 500 of those at the Inc. compound, top 40 years. You see that nuance, I think would bring this whole thing down. I do. I think that would change the laws. I do.
Again, I go back to your if. you said, if we can get people to hear this or understand it, and I think that's a much bigger obstacle than you think.
Okay, well that you might be right.
Because already people don't get it, you know, and
there you might be right, and that's why I want to do it. But again, I don't want to force it. I don't want to dox people. I don't want to threaten people. I would like that to be I would like that to become a thing of reconciliation. I'd like it to become a conversation of reconciliation among the two parties. I see this thing. I see two camps. To me, there's the people inside, there's the people outside, there's the three camps. And then there's the people outside that were in that top 40. That's its own group. And they need to be talking about what they saw over the last 40 years that wasn't illegal, but destroyed people. And they need to be talking about it a lot more. And they're probably listening to this going, I interview people on that all the time. I talk about that all the time. I'm not talking about those interviews. I'm talking about, what you saw and where you didn't feel like you could open your mouth or do anything. What you saw where you didn't feel like you could open your mouth and say anything. Just what you saw, what made you hate yourself because you couldn't do anything to change it, or you had to swallow it because you would be punished if you said anything. Forget the interviews. Just 40 years of the top 40 people talking about that stuff themselves. And a very good example of this is something you can find on YouTube, where this guy named Hy Levy, who was a registrar, a sales or fundraiser in South Florida, at the base in Clearwater, Florida, before he died. But before he died, he did a series of interviews with the Tampa Bay Times called The Truth Rundown, where he gets into the nuance of these fundraising engagements. And it is powerful. There's nothing like it. It's accountability. It's what Gary does when he talks. He'll tell you the truth. And if we had 100 of those stories from the top 40 over the last 40 years from that desert compound, this whole thing crumbles. If you want to know what I think that looks like, go on YouTube and look at Hy Levy Truth Rundown. Watch those interviews, and you will see what this looks like. Are you gone? I'm going. I don't see you. Or you're back. Okay, you disappeared. All right, so can we do? I gotta go, man. Can we do questions, or can I go, please?
Yeah, reconciliation in Australia was about indigenous culture, nothing to do with Scientology. So shut up. No, he's just using that as a comparison of an example of something we need. We need a reconciliation like that one.
One of the things that's in that apology is specifically what was done to the children in terms of the separation of their parents. What you have is multiple generations of children in this group that were separated.
In the abuse of the indigenous people was the stealing of the lighter skinned people.
That was
trying to whiteify them.
Generations of this group in SCN that were physically separated from their parents, and public members of this group that were psychologically separated from their parents. And that's in the apology, in the Australian apology, and that's specifically what I'm referring to.
Child separations. And no, Joe Nova's saying no, it's not, but I thought that too, so I don't know.
Well, Joe Nova, reach out to me on Instagram. Maybe you don't know what happened in the hallows of the inner core back in the day, before they banned kids in 80s, mid 80s, and further banned them in the early 90s or mid 90s. Okay. But
all right, Joe Nova. It's not good. It's
all right.
I can yell at him, but nobody else can.
Okay.
Vegan saying Camp Rinder has shut up completely. After all the stuff being pointed out, they don't say another word. And that's also very suspicious. That's part of what makes it even worse. The more they recoil, the more they hide away like they're still fucking.
I'm sure from their point of view, they are being treated unfairly. And for all I know, they might be. But we don't
Well,
know because they will say.
Two paranoid assholes, whenever somebody says, what are you up to? It seems like an attack.
Yeah, we don't know because they haven't said.
You know what I mean? Like when Leah Remini, for example, asked David Miscavige where his wife was at the wedding, and he responds with "fuck, shut up, lady." Like that's what I'm saying. Like that's
All right.
Defensiveness. That's what it is. Defensiveness.
Are there any more questions, or should we wrap it?
I don't know. Let's wrap it.
Okay. Are there any more
Do you
questions?
have anything else you want to yell at me about?
No, I'm just telling you my opinion. There's a lot.
Whitney says confessional videos, testimonials, those are very hard when trying to recover from abuse.
I know, that's why it needs to be promoted as a thing. Top 40 over the last 40 years, nuance. Okay. Legal, illegal, what psychologically destroyed people? What are, like, let's redact the names and tell some of the stories. Hundreds of them. This thing goes down. Trust me. But
Vegan says, if you were in the X forum, you'd know this. They think everybody was guilty, so they say shut up. That's Jeffrey saying that anyway. Okay. I'm not sure what that's in reference to. I'm not sure who Jeffrey is.
Okay.
But yeah, they think everybody's guilty.
We're cool, dude. We're cool. Like I don't need. We could disagree, and I could still love you. But thank you for that. Okay, all right. You gotta stop. Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like I just matter. Yeah, it's cool. I like that we disagree. It would be boring if we always agree. Okay, so can we wrap, or is there more?
Yes, we can go. No, it's okay. There's comments mostly. You know, California voted for reparations to African Americans. Now they refuse to follow through because it's expensive.
Not touching that one.
Oh, we already said that one. Yeah, right. We did that one already. Sorry. Now I'm like, all right. Here we go. See, Joe Nova's enjoying listening. Yeah. He's good banter.
Yeah, don't beat us up. We're already.
Can they then leave it there after the video, not have to deal with the inevitable behavior analysis breakdown? No.
Okay, what does that mean, Whitney?
I think she means in terms of the last time Rinder and at camp said anything. They feel like they don't have to deal with the inevitable behavior analysis breakdown, which is what we're doing. We're looking at them going, what are you guys doing? And we have to sit here and try to figure it out because they don't want to tell us because they're still acting like fucking Scientologists.
I don't know. I wouldn't say it in such a judgmental way. I would say they may not even see it. They can be very good people and not see it. Because
if they really didn't see it, they wouldn't be so shifty. They wouldn't be so closed off.
I don't know if that's true. I think that when people are attacked, they close off. If they feel attacked, they close off. Again, we don't try to resolve these things in a human way where we say, hey, we're not getting along. Let's sit down and resolve this. We say, F you. Yeah. We handle it like the way we were raised to handle it. And that's the shame of
disconnect.
Handle it, crack some skulls or disconnect, threat or disconnect. That's what we know, and that's what we tend to do when we have to deal with something. And maybe grace, compassion, an understanding that maybe the people don't see it, and a conversation. Encouraging a conversation rather than a confrontation is the answer. Okay. But maybe, but I could be wrong. And I should ask Serge what he thinks and ask Miriam what she thinks. And
yeah, right. No, the vegan makes a good point here. They sent a letter from a lawyer saying people had fleas. And again, like we had said earlier about trauma victim, being literate about how to talk to trauma victims. Like it's insane to me that the lawyer put that
but again,
and it's very OSA Scientology kind of tactic thing to do.
I think Vegan 3 is right, but they're not necessarily mutually exclusive. Like that person, I'm assuming it's a woman because they're vegan. Just kidding. I don't know why I think that, but it's true what he or she just said, but it's also true that because they were in the bubble their whole lives, that maybe they don't see it. Both can be true. Okay. And that, maybe some grace and compassion would facilitate the one's ability to see if they can't see it. But let's call it homeo. Okay.
All right. Wait, there's one last comment here, which is, she's female. Encouraging conversation instead of confrontation. I like that.
Yeah, I think the camps aren't talking to each other. Let's talk to each other. Okay.
Bridge.
Anybody that wants to have a private conversation in me, I'm not looking for anybody to be punished. If you know what was happening at the International Desert Compound in 1996, that led to the ethics mission that came down to Los Angeles that destroyed a lot of lives, I would love to know about that. If you were up at the Desert Compound when the library campaign was going on, I would love to know what was the pressure that led to that. If you know what was going on when the chase wave was going on at the Desert Compound that would have facilitated or led to that, I would have loved to know. If you know what was going on at the Desert Campaign with detail when the forced abortions were happening all over the world, mostly, I guess, in probably Florida or Los Angeles, and you know of specific conversations and how that trickled down, I would love to know. If you know of conversations about children, any conversations about the treatment of children over the last 40 years, I would love to know, even just privately, that would be really a beautiful thing to know. And I don't want to see you, I'm not saying that in an aggressive way, and I'm willing to respect silence just to know. But I do think that I would encourage you to share it with all of us, but I would just like to know. And I don't want to yell at you. I don't want to make you feel bad. I don't want to shame you. I don't want to do what they did to us. Okay. Judge, shame, blame, regret. I just want to know and say thank you. And maybe we can all move on and be friends. That's what I would like to do. But maybe I'm naive.
I was, hey, what do I know? I was born in a cult.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Should we call it?
All right. We'll call it.
All right. Well, this has been great. No. Okay.
No, apparently it sucks.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait, I just want to point this out real quick. The Fat Grammy said something, but I'm not. This isn't. It's not doing the thing. Oh, there we go. That Jamie is talking about bringing them down with bad PR, and I'm talking about bringing them down by definition. And that's why I was saying earlier we're having different conversations.
They're not mutually exclusive. I believe the way you bring them down by definition is by exposing the. It's a really good comment, Mona.
But that's not what the term by definition means.
Let me respond to Mona's comment because I think it's a really good comment. I know her. I like her. I think she's a really brilliant person, and I agree with her. And we're actually what I'm trying to say, Mona, is that if you look at NXIVM, that the FBI, the feds did not act until it was on the front page of the New York Times. And often these cases, until they're exposed in the press, they don't do that. So we had the aftermath, which was something. Okay?
But before the FBI did that, NXIVM was never identified as a religion. They've always.
I know. But the point that I'm making want to make to Mona, she and I can talk about it privately, is I agree with her. But if we had the top 40 people and what they knew, if that became a thing, a campaign, and they were participating with us, not being doxxed and attacked by us, but like doing this in conversations of shared responsibility, shared accountability, shared trauma informedness, shared relief, shared catharsis. I believe that those specific stories of self, not interviews, would help to change the definition. I believe that is the path to change the definition. So I think we're saying the same thing, Mona, just do we agree on how to get there? I think going after a big Borg and calling it slimetology all the time, there's no person that did anything there. There's no person that looked the other way. So it will never land on people the way it does when Gary says, hey, I was a prison warden that brought back hundreds of people. Let me give you a specific time I did that. Gary does that. That lands a whole different way. If we had hundreds of those, if those were the nature of the videos, individuals, what they did, how they felt about it, what they did, that's reconciliation.
Yeah, I understand. I understand. You're right. And that would hit a whole different way. And I think it would hit really hard.
Yeah.
But I honestly think the only way to stop it really is to take away the privilege of religion.
And I think we get to that point of taking away the privilege by revealing those stories through compassion.
Well, let's do it.
Okay.
It's mustartology. Let's do it.
All right. But Mona, we'll talk about it. All right. We're done. We're doing this out. Mustard out.
All right. We're out. Thank you,
right.
Jamie.
All right.
I
You got
love
it, bro.
you.
Okay. Talk see you soon, brother.
Bye, everybody. Bye. I can't get now. It won't end. Something wrong with my mouse pad.